You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Hi everyone. I'm Jeremiah. Welcome back to the 14th session of the Gleanings of the Writings from Baha'u'llah. Uh, this course is facilitated by Peter Terry. And Peter, if you want to play the video now.
Yeah, I want to introduce it very briefly. Thank you all for coming back after we took a rather long vacation. Um, and uh, so, just to let you know, at the beginning of this session, we're going to do 2 more weeks in December. Then we're going to take a break and come back in January. And we'll give you all those dates before the end, and then those will also be posted on the Clearwater website, so you won't get lost. Okay, promise that. Okay, we're gonna tie this one up with a bow at the end. So what we're going to start with is the end of the recording of the last session, and the reason why is because somebody raised a question, and I promised that we would answer it in the beginning of this session because we didn't have time to address it then. So Jeremiah is going to roll that short bit of video. Wisdom. Angela, you want to say something.
Yes, thank you. I was chatting with a person the other day, and since Baha'u'llah is talking about governance, it wasn't directly in the quotes that we read this time, but it's about the election of how we elect people in the Baha'i community. And I was talking with some people. Actually, I'm not certain if I was talking with them. I think somebody who I have talked with before was talking with them, because I'm kind of going, did that really come up in the conversation? But later on, I heard that they were a person who I have had very little conversations with. So it was either me talking directly or this other person who's heard from me talking about how we don't have campaigning and now, we don't have nominations and stuff like that. And so the question that this person asked was, well, how are you going to stop people from campaigning in the future? And I have some ideas on that, but I would really love to hear what other people have to say. And so it's also not around, I was mostly around not campaigning. They felt that as it became something that was more worldwide, that you would just have people campaigning because they felt that was part of a human tendency to want to have those positions. And I know Baha'u'llah says that in the future, no king will even want the position. So I know that's part of the answer, but I'd like to hear what else you or anybody else has to say on it.
So I want. Okay, so I wanted to begin by a few remarks on that question, and if there's anybody else who would like to add, they'd be welcome to do so. First of all, I wanted to point out that we have a unique system of governance that is based upon doing things because they are God's will, not because they're our will. The intention is always that we're serving all of humanity. If you look at the reference to the local spiritual assembly, which is called the local house of justice in the Baha'u'llah, it says that they are to serve humanity as a whole. So whether we are serving on the local community, the national community, or at the universal house of justice level, we're always serving humanity. So that's one thing. But we're serving humanity that is doing the will of God. That's the intention. And that's why we're held to the laws of the Baha'u'llah, because those are revealed laws. And then whatever laws are necessary beyond the ones revealed by the manifestation are enacted by the universal house of justice. And that was Baha'u'llah's intention. That's how he designed the system of governance. And the reason why this is important for us to understand is because, of course, we live in a Western country, in a country that has been governed by representative government for a long time. And Of course, representative government may be representing monetary interests and racial interests and various other kind of interests, but the idea still is that it's representing people and their wishes, whereas the purpose of the Baha'i institutions is to do the will of God. And the will of God requires that they be detached from their own desires, their own wishes, and the wishes of their families and their neighbors and, their fellow Baha'is. They have to become really detached, and they have to think, what would Baha'u'llah want us to do? And then, of course, since he revealed lots of laws, we have lots of guidance. And we also have, of course, the guidance of Abdul Baha and Shoghi Effendi, who have led us to the right interpretation of many of those laws. So I just wanted to make the point that the reason why there's no campaigning and there's no, we're not involved in campaigning at all, because then you would be currying favor with people to try to get them to vote for you. But that's not the idea. The whole idea is that you're serving God. And when you sit down and make a decision about who to vote for, you're supposed to be picking the person or persons that you believe is best going to serve the will of God. And that's not based upon their popularity. That's not based upon any external factors. We have certain criteria that the Master and the Guardian, Abdul Baha and the Guardian, have pointed out to us. But those are all criteria that help us to choose people who are qualified to make a decision based on the will of God. And this is why the Guardian called the Baha'i governance system a theocracy. Not because it has any resemblance whatsoever to the theocracies of the past, which were peopled by clergy, by professionals who work their way up the ladder, so to speak, in their fame and their expertise in religious law that was mostly enacted by other people, by other clergy. So we don't have any clergy. So the people who are going to be making decisions based on the will of God in our religion can't be selected in the same way. They can't be selected because they have certain specific credentials or because they're popular. So really, these criteria for membership on institutions are radically different from what we've ever seen before. And, it will improve over time for sure, because we're not used to this. We're accustomed to choosing people for completely different reasons. Now, if there's anybody who wants to add to that comment, I'd be glad to recognize them. It looks like we're ready to go on with the material, so I'm going to go ahead and share here. If it will behave now. Come on. Okay. So, Jeremiah, I don't understand why my screen is not doing what it's supposed to do. Okay, so I'm going to get out of. Oh, there it is. How about that? How did that get there? Anyway, we don't care. As long as it's there, it's there. Okay. So as you have become accustomed, if you've been participating in this class for a while, this section here is going to introduce you to the subject of the 6 excerpts that are found in today's selection in number 14. And as you see, I'll go over this because it will give you a good foundation for the provenance, where these come from. So one of them is beginning with a tablet revealed in Arabic, which just we don't know who it was addressed to, and it basically the theme that seems to pop out from that selection, which is 123, is that we have to learn from history. And the second selection, it's from the Kitabi Hadi, and it's distinguishing between divine and human learning, which is a theme that if you've read the Kitabi Hagan, especially if you've read it several times, you've seen that Baha'u'llah has a lot to say on this subject.
Excuse me, Peter, but
Yes.
we can't see the gleanings. There is something about the 14th session that's in front.
You can't see it?
We can't see the writings.
You
for
can't
each-
see the text.
Right.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. You're just seeing my comments. That's why, because
Yeah.
I'm reading from the comments. I'm reading from the notes. Okay. After I finish reading from the notes, I'll close that window. And the reason why I left it open was so that you could follow along with the comments. And it's just introducing the selections. That's all.
That's good.
Okay. No, unfortunately, the way this app is currently formatted, I don't know how to create a parallel. It'd be great if I could put on one side, put the text, and on the other side, put a commentary. But I don't think we have that mastered yet. At least I don't. And I don't have two screens up in front of me that I can use to do that. But I'm glad that you pointed that out, because that is something that we want to eventually have. Then as you see from 125, you have an excerpt from the Kitabi Hagan, which is talking about the search for truth, the independent investigation of truth. Then in a tablet to Mirza Haydar Ali, who is called the Angel of Carmel, and who is much beloved teacher of the faith, who lived his last years close to Baha'u'llah, because Baha'u'llah wanted him to be there. Baha'u'llah is describing what's expected of his followers, what kind of behavior he expects from them. This is followed by an extract from a tablet to Haji Muhammad Ibrahim Mubali, which refers to the greatest proof of the manifestation of God and the opposition to his claims by some of the followers of Allah. And that's in 127. And then that's followed by an excerpt from the Suratul Bayan, which was also addressed to Haji Muhammad Ibrahim Mubali, in which Baha'u'llah sets forth the behavioral requirements, the requirements in terms of behavior of his followers. And he calls upon them all to be teachers of his faith, and gives very precise instructions on how his faith is to be taught. And this is 128. There you go. So that's covering all the 6 excerpts that are found in this particular group of passages that we're looking at today. Now, each one has a commentary on it. Some of them are very, very brief, because I thought that after reading many of these passages, that people would appreciate just focusing on Baha'u'llah's words rather than necessarily looking at what I had to say about them. And sometimes the meaning, the more Baha'u'llah that you read, the more you understand what he means directly, without any intermediary, without anybody telling you. You just get it, you know? And this is one of the reasons why it's so important for us to read these great collections of Baha'u'llah's writings over and over. You probably heard me tell this story before if you've been around and heard some of my talks. There's a story that Mirza Abu Fazl, who is universally regarded as the greatest Baha'i scholar, a man of tremendous knowledge and wisdom, and greatly beloved both by Baha'u'llah and Abdullah, that he said that he read the Kitab-i-Gan 6 times with the eye of reason. He didn't say it wasn't useful, but he said then he read it once with the eye of faith. And it was different. It was very different. And Baha'u'llah wants us to open the eye of faith, because when we embrace his teachings emotionally as well as intellectually, that's when we get it. Because the heart is involved. Remember, Baha'u'llah says, I don't want your power. I don't want your possessions. I want the hearts of human beings. That's what God wants, is our hearts. So here he makes this he makes this very strong statement. He says, around those whom in life circled the fairest and loveliest of the land, where are they now? Again, those are material benefits which are not of great value to us in the next world. And then again, he's here in this second paragraph, he's talking about the same thing. He's talking about others here long will lay hands on what ye possess and enter into your habitations. These, for many of you who have read the Bible and particularly read the Gospels, there are a lot of sayings of Baha'u'llah that sound just like they're being said by Jesus. They're really amazingly close to what Jesus said. And we really shouldn't be surprised by that, because he says, I am with the return of Jesus, and I am the spirit of truth that's come to tell you all the truth. So they are directly connected. And here in this paragraph, he's talking about, for every one of you, his paramount duty is to choose for himself that on which no other can infringe and none usurp from him. And that, such a thing, and to this the Almighty is my witness, is the love of God. Many of these passages for me are things that I've read many, many times over and thought a great deal about, and it's like spiritual food to read them. It reminds us of what's really important. Here's another passage here. Build ye for yourselves such houses as the rain and floods can never destroy. Beautiful imagery, and very similar to the imagery that Jesus uses when he's talking about the same thing. Everything that's in this world is temporary. It's what's in the next world that's permanent. And here is talking about, it's a summation of the unity of God, the reality of God, and his incorruptible essence. So this kind of reminds us of the way that the Guardian put this wonderful deepening package together. That is a theme that is found in the very beginning of the book, but it's also found interspersed in many other places, because we need to be reminded, as much as we're learning a great deal about many things, we need to come back to the importance of understanding the true nature of God, because that's what everything else is based on. This is also a very beautiful statement of what Baha'u'llah calls in the Kitabiyun God, the universal revelation of God. The universal revelation of God is the revelation of his names and attributes in all things. There is nothing without this revelation. And so here he says, so none of his creatures may be deprived of its share in expressing each according to its capacity and rank this knowledge, this sign of his knowledge. And sometimes this kind of language may come across as abstract because we don't how beautifully it is manifested in creation. And so he reminds us this by saying this sign is the mirror of his beauty in the world of creation. Some of you, if you remember the opening pages of the Kitabiyah class, where it says, follow my commandments for love of my beauty. So beauty is very much involved in this revelation of God in our spiritual education. And here, everything created thing will be enabled, so great is this reflecting power to reveal the potentialities of its preordained station. We'll recognize its capacity and limitations. The emphasis in Baha'u'llah's writings on the obligations and the privileges of the individual is really consistent. And we live in a time when people are very much attracted to doing things together. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as we remember the role of the individual in making choices. It's so important that we develop our individual character and capacities because each one of us is different. And as he points out, he says, there can be no doubt whatever that in consequence of the efforts which every man may consciously exert, and as a result of the exertion of his own spiritual faculties, this mirror may be so cleansed from the dross of earthly defilements and purged from satanic fancies as to be able to draw nigh unto the means of eternal holiness and attend the courts of everlasting fellowship. Can't get a better promise than that our individual effort really does make a huge difference. Also in this paragraph, he talks about very special rank of the days immediately associated with the manifestation of God. And of course, one of the distinctive characteristics of the Baha'i Faith is that we had two independent manifestations of God living on the earth at the same time for many years. And then there are all kinds of mysteries that are found in that. And it makes that time that both of them were here, and also when each individually was here, to be such a special time. I am sure that we will be reading the Dawnbreakers and the Memorials of the Faithful written by Abdul for many centuries to come, because that's in those accounts that we encounter the description of the believers of that time, who had the privilege of living at the time that the manifestations of God were on earth, where they could have direct contact with God during their lives. I wanted to point out this passage here, where he's talking about no man shall ever stand in need of his neighbor. And this is not only related to the Baha'i principle of the independent investigation of reality, it's also a fulfillment. It's a fulfillment of a prophecy found in the book of Jeremiah, where he says the covenant that will come in the future will be a covenant in which each person will come to the truth on their own. It will not be a covenant that is primarily passed on from generation to generation, but one that is discovered by each person. And here Baha'u'llah is talking about that power. And that enables us actually, rather than being dependent on the learning and the erudition and the wisdom and of other people, we are made independent of all human learning. And then here you have in this passage, many of you know this passage, if not by heart, pretty close to it, because you've read it so many times at feast, at holy days, and various other places. Sometimes it's called the Tablet of the True Seeker, but it's actually simply part of the Kitabi Guide. And we won't dwell on this because it's something that we read often. I certainly know that I do. I find it to be one of the most profound and inspiring passages from Baha'u'llah's writings. Really, in this passage, he just spells out what we need to do with our lives in order to be in keeping with the will of God. And this continues, of course, in the next paragraph and in the next paragraph. And I just want to read a little bit from this paragraph and what follows next. And the reason why is because this is such an important teaching of Baha'u'llah. He says he should forgive the sinful and never despise his low estate, for none knoweth what his own end shall be. How often has a sinner attained at the hour of death to the essence of faith, and quaffing the immortal draught, hath taken his flight unto the concourse on high? And how often hath a devout believer, at the hour of his soul's ascension, been so changed as to fall into the nethermost fire? You know, there are plenty of faiths that give you assurance that if you simply do what you're supposed to do, you're going straight to heaven. No question about it. Baha'u'llah doesn't give us that assurance at all. He gives us the assurance that until our very last breaths, we must be attuned to his will, because we could turn away. And we have free will. We have free will even on our deathbeds. And this is also such a powerful teaching in terms of instructing us not to be judgmental of other people and not to believe that we are superior to other people, because no man or woman knoweth his own end. We don't know where we're going to end. And then, of course, this is also part of the same passage from the Kitabi Guide, where Baha'u'llah is talking about the transformation that happens, which, by the way, is found described in the Baha'i writings, both by Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha, as a new birth. He uses very similar language, sometimes identical language, to that used by Jesus in the Gospels. There's a new birth that occurs when the soul becomes so enraptured with God and with his will and with his teachings and his revelation that it experiences a new birth. It becomes something new. And I'm going to leave that for your meditation. because I know you're going to go back and read this. I know you'll read it many, many times. We've all done the same thing. So, oh, and then just very briefly, he has this wonderful series of passages from the Kitab-i-Iman about the city of certitude. He talks about the city and the trees that flourish in the city, and talks about the destiny for that city and the messianic spirit and the burning bush and all these images that you've encountered certainly in the Bible many times. And then right here, having said, once in about 1,000 years shall this city be renewed and readorned, he explains, what is this city? Now, isn't that a beautiful way of doing things? Is you allude to something gradually, and then finally you say what it is. And that this is the most succinct quotation I've ever found to the principle of progressive revelation. That city is none other than the word of God revealed in every age and dispensation. In the days of Moses, it was the Pentateuch. In the days of Jesus, the gospel. In the days of Muhammad, the messenger of God, the Quran. In this day, because Baha'u'llah is speaking at this point, before he has declared his revelation, at that point, he is a Babi. As far as anybody is concerned, he's a Babi. In this day, the Bayan, and in the dispensation of him who God make manifest, his own book, the book unto which all the books of former dispensations must needs be referred, the book that standeth amidst them all, transcending and supreme. So if you ever need to find a paragraph of Baha'u'llah's writings that gives a snapshot of the principle of progressive revelation, it's right there in the Kitab-i-Iman. And you can find it simply by doing a word search under city. Now, it's going to switch me over to this. In this passage, Baha'u'llah is I think that's going to be confusing. And so I'm just going to stick with here. In this passage, Baha'u'llah is talking about the motive for his revelation. The motive for his revelation is really described in this beautiful sentence. We have with the utmost kindliness and mercy summoned and directed all peoples and nations to that which shall truly profit them. I'm sure that you will encounter other passages where Baha'u'llah says the same thing. God's purpose has been to improve our lives, to change sorrow into joy, to make us happy. And not just happy in this world, but happy in the next world as well. And here he's giving praise to those people who do not have a dichotomy between their outward conduct and their inward life. Very important principle of Baha'u'llah. In order to be a real believer, we can't just believe, we have to act. Like he says here, truthfulness and goodwill have at all times marked their relations with all men. He's talking about the people of God, that's us. Their outward conduct is but a reflection of their inward life, and their inward life a mirror of their outward conduct. Their very acts attest the truth of these words. Here he's in this passage, he's talking about the fulfillment of the prophecies and of the statements in the previous scriptures. And in this revelation. And look at this language. For we are surrounded with so much negativity. And here he says the portals of grace are wide open before the face of man. And then he concludes this passage with, no man that seeketh us will we ever disappoint. Neither shall he that hath set his face towards us be denied access unto our court. What an absolutely beautiful promise. This passage also is emphasizing the importance of our behavior. See, if we look at this, help ye the one true God, exalted be his glory, by your goodly deeds, by such conduct and character, it shall be acceptable in his sight. Also, this is a passage that reflects, it's found in many other passages about, and I can remember not the precise moment, but I can recall the joy that I experienced when I recognized what he meant by making this statement. If it be your wish, O people, to know God and to discover the greatness of his might, look then upon me with mine own eyes, and not with the eyes of any one beside me. You will otherwise be never capable of recognizing me, though ye ponder my cause as long as my kingdom endureth. What does that mean? To recognize him through his eyes rather than our eyes or anybody else. He explains this so clearly. Baha'u'llah explains his revelation in his revelation. If we want to understand what he has to say to us and look at it and see it accurately, we have to understand it his way, not sort of interpreting it according to our own ideas. It's the human tendency that we try to bring everything down to earth, to be able to say, that's my truth, that's my understanding. Ultimately, our understanding doesn't matter. What matters is what is the objective truth. And this may be one of the roots of the agreement between science and religion, because true science and true religion are both looking for objective reality. And objective reality, spiritual reality, is to see through the eyes of the manifestation. The manifestation, whatever he says about any subject, he's telling us what it is, the reality. Here, in this passage, he's talking about the many enemies that have surrounded him. And every time that Baha'u'llah talks about the oppression that he has received as a manifestation, he always brings us back to explaining that we should not regard our own sufferings as being so weighty, because he shares that suffering. And his suffering has been infinitely greater. And yet he has accepted that all of that pain and all of that suffering is for some ultimate purpose, some greater purpose. And therefore he accepts that. Whatever God has willed is fine. And here he's contrasting that attitude towards the attitude that negates the manifestation, negates that surrender of our own personal desires. Some have turned away from the faith of God, rejected the authority of him in whom they had believed, and acted insolently towards God. Others have hesitated and halted in his path. Thus have their works come to naught, and yet they fail to perceive it. Among them is he who sought to measure God with the measure of his own self. See, that's where it is. The measure of his own self, instead of seeing him through his own eyes. He spells it right out, you see, right out in his own words. And yet, Baha'u'llah has so much mercy for humanity. He doesn't wish evil upon anyone. No. He brought up his half-brother, Mirza Yahya, with such love and devotion. And Mirza Yahya was first his assistant, and in keeping with his will, he became a Babi. But then he was appointed to a sort of caretaking position by the Bab with Baha'u'llah's agreement. And instead of seeing that as an opportunity to take care of him whom God shall make manifest until it's time for him to declare, he turned it as an opportunity for his personal leadership. And so Mirza Yahya became the implacable enemy of Baha'u'llah for the rest of his life. But he was not rejected, and he was not disapproved for that. He was asked to come back, to repent, to return. If you read the Epistle of the Son of the Wolf, it talks about that in really quite some detail. It describes his implacable opposition, and then it says, come back. You will be forgiven. All will be forgotten. And so here's what he says, cast not, O my God, the fury of thy wrath upon them. Cause them to tarry until such time when the wonders of thy mercy will be made manifest, that haply they may return unto thee and ask forgiveness for the things they have committed against thee. If you will permit me in one moment, I have two little girls that I need to put in the right direction. I will be right back to you.
Daddy.
Yeah, baby. All right. I am back to you. by permission of my children, I'm asking for your forgiveness for this small intrusion. Here's a great passage where he talks. Doth it beseem a man, while claiming to be a follower of his Lord the All-Merciful, he should yet in his heart do the very deeds of the evil one? Consistency. As you see, many of these passages in not just in this particular tablet, but in others as well, are on this theme of the outward and the inward, the inward belief and the outward conduct being in agreement with each other, because both are necessary. I don't need to.
Oh, do it. Since you won't get out of the car. You have to. We don't know how to do it. We don't know how to do it. We don't know how to do it. I don't know. You asked her. No, come in.
Don't argue.
I know.
I
Won't tell. Come. And Mom said I should do it by myself. I want to do it by myself. What's what?
Here's another passage where, this is describing the kind of behavior that is completely unacceptable. Fear God, O people, and refrain from shedding the blood of anyone. Contend not with your neighbor, and be of them that do good. Beware that ye commit no disorders on the earth after it hath been well ordered, and follow not the footsteps of them that have gone astray. And here he's talking about teaching, but the teaching is not just to go and speak. Teaching has, as he says, unless he teacheth his own self, the words of his mouth will not influence the heart of the seeker. It's all of these passages here are really about this inward and the outward being in agreement with each other. Commit not, O people, that which will bring shame upon you or dishonor the cause of God in the eyes of men. Beware lest ye encroach upon the substance of your neighbor. These are full of ethical prescriptions, which are actually laws. They're commandments of God. These are not tangential in any way. They're really essential. We think of as Baha'is, we think of unity of mankind and equality of men and women and seeking justice between those who have much and those who have little as being fundamental principles of faith. So these are fundamental principles of faith, these ethical principles. And here we're called upon to teach the cause of God, all of us. This also do we have this one? He talks about not disputing. You remember there are passages where Abdu'l-Baha says that if there are two believers and they disagree about something and they continue to disagree, then both of them are wrong. And here he's talking about it in the same topic, but using different words. Dispute not with anyone concerning the things of this world and its affairs, for God hath abandoned them to such as set their affection upon it. This also pertains to that principle of non-involvement in politics. Because political involvement invariably involves this kind of disputation between different points of view. So I'm going to cede the floor to you now and invite you to make comments and ask questions. And Angela is the first one who's raised.
Hello, just give me a sec to get to the passage I want to ask a question about. In paragraph the 128.5, it says, "Beware that ye commit no disorders on the earth after it hath been well ordered, and follow not the footsteps of them that have gone astray." Well, what about before the earth hath been well ordered?
Could you repeat the last couple of words? I didn't hear them.
Okay, so I read that section from Gleanings, and
Yes.
I'm wondering, well, it says that we shouldn't create any disorder after it's been well ordered. And I'm saying, what about before it's well ordered? Because right now it's not very well ordered. And so does that kind of give us room for, before that point, to be, I don't want to say in protest, but in that place where, you're bringing to, you're highlighting the things that are of disorder?
Well, let's consider this. Because I know this is kind of it's a difficult topic for Baha'is to put their heads around because of the culture we live in, and because our assumptions that if we don't take certain actions against what we perceive to be injustice, that we're shirking in our duty as citizens and as human beings. And I think we need to recall that Baha'u'llah, throughout his tablets, and in particular when he's speaking to monarchs, to kings, and in some cases kings who have dealt very nastily, who have opposed him, who have oppressed him and oppressed the Baha'is, Nasruddin Shah, for example. He nevertheless says that the king has a responsibility, and his responsibility is to run the country. He's in charge, and that he is accountable to God for doing that. And he is to follow the teachings of God in doing so. But he also insists that that Baha'u'llah insists that he does not involve himself in trying to force the monarch to change. He gives him advice. He gives him quite pointed advice sometimes. As a manifestation of God, he's not only entitled to do that, that's one of his functions, is to speak truth to power, to use a modern term. But he doesn't seek disorder. He's many, many times pointed out, he doesn't seek to usurp the position of the monarch. He doesn't seek to overthrow him or to undermine his authority. And so I think this is one of the distinctive characteristics of Baha'i governance, is that we're not out to change the world politically. We're out to change the world spiritually, and that through that change, a new kind of governance will come into existence, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a governance where we do God's will. Because if we do God's will unitedly, we're going to have harmony and happiness all the time. And it's the only true source of harmony and happiness, because otherwise we're pitting ourselves against each other because you have one vision of happiness, somebody else has another vision of happiness, and all we have to do is look at the divorce rate in the United States and other countries to know that even the most intimate of associates have a really hard time agreeing about many things. But that's not the case if all of us are submitting ourselves to the will of God. Through that process, we learn how to forgive each other. Again, remember, this man who tried with so many times throughout his life to kill Baha'u'llah. Over and over, we have the most awful stories about his attempts to kill his half-brother. And at the end of his life, Baha'u'llah is still extending him the hand of peace, the hand of forgiveness. Come back. It's a very different attitude. You know, it's actually the same attitude that Jesus showed us on the cross when he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Riaz, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. As you had
I
promised.
can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now? No?
No, you have to turn your volume up.
Oh, let me see. It is
It's still very, very soft.
very soft.
Yeah.
Okay, is this better? Is this better?
Riaz, if you can just go ahead and speak, I can hear you, so
Oh,
I'll.
he can turn it up. Okay, that's fine.
All right. As you had promised, at the beginning of tonight's session, you went over the question that Angela had asked. You explained that, but she came a little after you had finished. She was a bit late tonight and she missed your explanation. And since she just spoke with you and she's here, maybe you could briefly address her question again. Thank you.
Yes, I could. Riaz, but I think that also Angela can simply listen to the recording of the beginning of the session and she'll hear her voice, her question, and then my response to it. And that way I don't have to repeat it for everybody. And I think that she'd be fine with that. And then let's have Mitchell. Go ahead and unmute, Mitchell.
Can you hear me, Peter?
Yes.
Okay. This is sort of in the similar vein in terms of being in politics, because right now I work for the county government at the county clerk's office in my county. So it has its political elements to it. And like for my first year of working there, even though I'm undecided, because in New Jersey there's no such thing as independent, or at least it's just undeclared. But I helped out at the Republican convention stuff. So I guess what I'm getting at is, can you be in appointed positions and whatnot, and still try to keep that aspect of the teachings? I mean, that's one aspect of the Baha'i Faith I like and enjoy, but in the situation where you work for a government job, so government jobs often involve politics.
Yeah. So let me express share some thoughts with you. One of them is that there was a constitutional revolution in Iran during the lifetime of Abdul Baha. And initially, Abdul Baha encouraged the Baha'is to get involved. It was a great, great step forward for the Iranian people to have this constitutional government. He encouraged them. But as has happened in virtually every, I would say probably every constitutionally developed democracy, it ended up being divisive. And because it was divisive, it ended up bringing about the end of the constitutional government. It fell. And before it fell, Abdul Baha could see the warning signs. And he told the Baha'is, don't be involved at all. So his guidance initially had been encourage that government, right? Because it's a good thing that it's come into existence. But then when it starts creating disunity, we're out of it. We're out of it. Okay? And the Guardian, looking around the world, says, well, now we've had a little bit more experience because there are more and more countries that now have experimented with representative government. And look what is happening universally. They're at each other's throats. They're opposed to each other. They're fighting with each other. So to address this question of can you be appointed? Yes. I'll give you an example. There was a man who was appointed to be a hand of the cause. His name, he was called General Alai. He was not a general, okay? But he had that rank. He was given that rank by no other than the Shah of Iran, the king of Iran. Why? Because General Alai was a man of principle. That man had absolutely sterling morals, and he handled all the financial matters pertaining to the Shah. And he never made a mistake. And he was uncorruptible. And so he was appointed to that position. And he served in that position with great distinction. But, and I've heard this story told to me by one of his great-grandchildren in person. Before he would take the job, he told the Shah, I'm a Baha'i, and I live according to the Baha'i teachings. And if you ever ask me to do something that's against the teachings of Baha'u'llah, I will not do it. And the Shah said, okay, come work for me. And he did. And so this is what we have to understand. We answer to God. Okay? And so if we can be of service to somebody who is in a position of government, that can be acceptable. In our day, we'd have to clear it with with the local or the National Spiritual Assembly and possibly with the Universal House of Justice. But it is possible to be of service to someone in government and not be in violation of Baha'u'llah. Because in principle, governance is something that all of us should be involved in. It's just that the way we go about it generally creates more disunity, more unhappiness, and more, what shall we call it? The very opposite of what Baha'u'llah is here to do. The whole purpose of this revelation is to bring us to the point where we have one global government, one global legal system, one global language, where we really have unity as the entirety of our species is together. It's never been done before. It hasn't. We've always been scattered and fighting each other. And so, of course, whatever needs to be taken for the Baha'is to be independent of all this fighting, we have to do it. It's sometimes very tempting to want to take a side. I understand. All of us have been there. But when we don't, and we do it for love of God, and we do it in obedience to the teachings, the fruits of that are, and Baha'u'llah promises this in so many tablets, the fruits of that, of our actions, go beyond anything we can imagine.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Yes, Riaz, please.
Before Riaz starts, I want to say this is going to be the last question, and then I need to close out. I apologize.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, for historical context, you spoke of General Ala'i. Just for historical context, I met when I was young, we met, my family and I met General Ala'i. He lived on the same street as we did. And so we are still in the beginning. We are still at the beginning of this administrative order. And so we still have those who have witnessed the birth of this administrative order. Thank you. Now, my question is about the topic of campaigning or influencing elective positions. It occurs to me that, especially in our more sophisticated societies, there has developed. We are so sophisticated now that there are subtle campaigning can be done in very subtle ways, because we have become so sophisticated. So there's no open and obvious campaigning, but when it comes to elected positions, we have developed very subtle and sophisticated ways to influence. And sometimes we bring these with us from the general culture in which we live. We absorb that by osmosis, and so we bring these traits or these habits with us into this divine administrative order, and sometimes unconsciously we practice them, and it amounts to campaigning, but it's not open. It's subtle. It is subtle, and we know very well how to orchestrate and influence people in this new order using the tools of this culture, the culture that surrounds us. So I'm wondering if you could say something, how we can be vigilant to notice these subtle ways of influencing our fellow Baha'is. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, you're muted, Peter. You're muted. Thank you.
So one of the things I want to thank you for, you and all of the Iranian Baha'is who have come to America, is that if there are people who know how to understand and notice subtlety, it is the Persian people. The Persian people have become masters of subtlety because of the doctrine of taqiyya that protected them from persecution, imprisonment, murder, and and all kinds of other calamities over hundreds and hundreds of years, because of course Persians lived under Sunni Muslims a great deal of the time, and uh, and not just the majority who were Shi'i, but also the Sufis. The Sufis lived under often governments that were hostile to Sufism. So the Persian people have learned a great deal about subtlety, and Americans are not so famous for this, by the way, as you may have noticed. And so we can learn by observing our Iranian now co-nationals who live amongst us, and by talking with them and learning about their culture. And this will be good for us, because Americans tend to be brash. We rather say something with conviction than qualify it in any sort of a way, because it feels better to us. So we can learn from you, and undoubtedly you'll learn something from us, because Baha'u'llah says that we must teach the faith with what is that wonderful word that he uses? Basically, no misgivings or second thoughts. Just do it with full confidence. And by the way, the person who exemplified that more than any other in our country was a tiny woman, and her name was Martha Root. And the Guardian said, "This is the greatest of the hands." And she was. And intrepid, fearless. So, my friends, I think Jeremiah wants to say good night to us, and let's say good night to Jeremiah.
Well, thank you all for joining tonight, and we look forward to seeing you all next